Okay, here I have my jelly jars. Just nothing too fancy, just the Ball brand. Any brand of jars will work. Care, whatever you find, as long as it's approved for canning, you're good to go. These come with the lids and the rings, but you can buy these separately also if you don't have any, if you just have some jars laying around and you're reusing them, they do have a box of those. And what I do before I start is I have a sink here of hot soapy water. Like, so hot, I can't even touch it right now. And that's what I start with. And a clean wash rag. This is dry, never used for washing dishes today or anything recently. I like to use a clean cloth because you never know, food particles get stuck in there, grease, all that, it absorbs all that stuff. So I like to start clean and fresh and make sure that my jars are clean and fresh. So what I do is I take the lid off of the jar here. It's kind of hard to do one-handed, but remove the ring and the lid. And I start by putting the jars in there. I'm going to put all these jars in there, and the lids and the rings, and then I let them sit until I can touch the water, until it's cool enough. And then I have this towel here, and I'll lay them here to dry. We'll come back when that's done. Okay, so I got the lids, the rings, and the jars all washed. They're drying here. They don't have to be completely dry because we are going to put them in here. This is a water bath canner. I forget how many quarts or whatever this is. It's a huge one. But and after I wash the jars, I wash my pot here. I wash this, and I'll fill it with water here, and I'll show you that in a second. And then this is where I'm going to be cooking it's just water in there, the syrup. And then here I have my chokecherry juice. I have a lot of it, so I'm going to have to make a couple batches. But yeah, so one thing I think I forgot to mention before is that when you extract the juice from the chokecherries, it's very important that you don't crush the seeds. So don't use a blender, immersion blender, all that. It may seem like it gets faster, but gently squeeze the cloth or whatever you're using to strain the juice, and don't crush the seeds because it contains cyanide and it can be poisonous. So that's why you make the juice and then you process it. The chokecherries themselves, the juice and everything is fine. It's just the seeds that are a problem. So I'll fill this up with the jars and I'll show you what's next. Okay, I don't have a lot of counter space, so this is gonna get awkward, but so here I have a big jug of filtered water. We get ours in town. We have old pipes, and there's a lot of minerals in there. And the one thing with these that you'll notice, it's not going to hurt it, but if you use just regular tap water and you have a lot of minerals or old pipes, it will make your jars pretty dirty, pretty cloudy. Like I said, it doesn't hurt it, it's not a problem, but except just you have to scrub a lot of it off, just because it looks weird. So to make it easier for the cleaning process, I use the filtered water. If you do use regular tap water, you can use about a tablespoon of vinegar, just regular plain white vinegar, in your water, and that will reduce the cloudiness of your jars. However, it can cause rusting in your basket and in your pot itself. So that's something to keep in mind. If you do use the vinegar, dump the water out right away, clean it really good, and make sure you put these out to dry right away too. So right now I'm gonna pour this water in here, attempt to do it without making too much of a mess, because we're gonna have to sterilize the jars. Test this out here. Excuse me, step and move. And You know, to sterilize it, you don't have to have it too high. I'll kind of bring you in for a close-up here in just a second, but what you want to do is it needs to be at least an inch above your jars, and I'll show you that when I go to process these. And that way, you know, you make sure that everything's underwater and it's going to get good sealed. So in water bath canning, it's pretty important you sterilize your jars. In pressure canning, personally, I don't worry about it too much just because it's cooking for an extended period of time and at a high pressure. So, you know, everything just automatically sterilizes itself. But in a water bath canner, it's not usually only processed between 5 to 10 minutes depending on your altitude and all that, which I'll talk about later. So yeah, that's very important. I'll leave a link in the description box with a link to the home preservation website. I highly recommend you look through that if you're a first-time canner. It has a lot of recipes on there, a lot of basics, getting started, how to, all that. So that's pretty important. Oh, I got one little jar. That's alright, I probably won't need all this anyway. So yeah, I highly recommend you check out that website, and like I said, I'll leave a link in the description box below. The recipe for the chokecherry syrup I got from the University of Minnesota extension website. There isn't one in this book. Chokecherries aren't common all over the place, so you know, that's why I use that website for reference. But another good book to have that I highly recommend is this complete book of home preserving from Ball. This book has been in print for a long time, and it has a lot of really good information as well as recipes and things. And like I mentioned, the altitude, it goes over in here, you know, how many feet are you where you live. We're at 1900 feet here where I'm at, and so it goes through all the instructions. Anything below 1,000 feet, this book has, and so but anything above that, and here too, it's actually, this book has a list of some cities in different states and their elevations, so that you might actually have something, your town might actually be in here or anything close to you. But a simple Google search will show you the exact elevation of where you're at. So besides the chokecherry juice, another thing that we need, I'll show you here, is going to be some pectin. Cost for the recipe is 4 cups of chokecherry juice, 4 cups of sugar, half a cup of lemon juice, and that's to add the acidity to preserve it. I don't skip on that. I just cannot stress that enough. That is what is going to preserve it and give it the acidity so that it will preserve well in the water bath can. So you guys will never guess what I forgot. The one thing I told you guys not to forget, I totally forgot. Oh boy. So, lemon juice. Get the kind from the store. It's a consistent acidity. You know, squeezing fresh lemons. The acidity varies from lemon to lemon. This at least gives you a consistent outcome. So, bottle lemon juice. Very important. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled canning tutorial. As much as it'll go. And then as well as it says a half pack of powdered pectin. Ooh, say that 10 times fast. Half pack of powdered pectin. Yeah, I already failed. But anyway, so what I use is I have just a huge jar of it. This is cheaper. If you're going to be doing a lot of this stuff, I highly recommend just buying a big container of it. This was like a little over $4 at a farm supply store that I really like going to in my hometown. But yeah, you can get this at the grocery store, wherever. It's so much more economical. And right here on the thing it says 3 tablespoons is 1 box of pectin. So I'm going to be using 1.5 tablespoons for this recipe. Now I have a lot more juice than one recipe, but I only do one batch at a time, and that's because, you know, when I'll kind of show you when I go to put the stuff in the jars that your working time from the heat to the jars is super quick. Your syrup will cool and gel pretty quickly, so you want to get that in the hot jars. Another reason for heating up the jars too, actually, is so that you don't want to put hot liquid into cold jars. You'll have a mess on your hands. Your jars will break. It'll just be not good. So I recommend that highly. And then for scooping the syrup, you can use a ladle, whatever you have. I like to use like a measuring cup. It's just easier with the handle. And then I have a bowl I set it in, so it minimizes the mess. And then a canning funnel. They have all different kinds. This is just a plastic one that came with about a kit with this. And then, oh, another thing too that I forgot is a jar grabber. I don't really I think that's what this is called. Anyway, it's to grab the jars out of the hot water safely. And then also just like a little bowl of white vinegar and either paper towels or a clean cloth to wipe the rims. And I'll talk to you more about that when we get to that step. So I'm going to get to sanitizing this and I'll be back. Okay, hopefully you can see this okay. The water is boiling. It's been boiling about 10 minutes. So I turned down the heat. By the time syrup is done and everything, those will be sanitized and good to go. And so here I have the pectin. And what I forgot to mention was that the pectin that I use is low or no sugar pectin. Sorry, I hope you can see that okay. Yeah, low or no sugar pectin. Sorry. There we go. Trying to get everything to focus. So what I have here, instead of the 4 cups that the recipe calls for, I have 3. I generally don't like to use a lot of sugar in my stuff, just because I try and watch my sugar intake. I don't really like things too sweet, so, you know, it's a personal preference. I do it for health reasons. And this is just regular beet sugar. I've never tried it with cane sugar, or I know there's instructions, I think, on how to do it with honey for jelly and stuff on the thing. If I ever do any experimenting with that with honey, I will let you know. But chokecherries are pretty tart, so I only reduced it by about 1 cup. But you know, like I said, once you get a taste for how this is and you want to add more or less, you can do that in the future. So, and then I take the pectin. I have it measured out here, 1.5 tablespoons, and I like to add it to my sugar first. Make sure everything's mixed in really good. You use a spoon or a whisk or whatever you have. Just make sure you try and get all the chunks of sugar and everything. My hands are clean, so I'm just kind of breaking up some of those chunks there. But yeah, you want to make sure that's mixed in there really good. And then you can add it to the juice here. Now, you might be asking why I have such a huge pot for such a little bit of juice. And that's because when you're working with syrup and jelly, it can boil over. You know, when you bring it, you want to bring it to a boil that can't be stirred down, and you know, you want to eliminate as much of a catastrophe as possible. So I use a bigger pot, and so that if it does boil up, it's not going to boil over. So, you know, that's another safety thing too, besides the mess, because it's hot. So I'll do this best I can here. Add this to the juice here, and just get in pretty good. Give it a good stir. Make sure everything's mixed in there really good, and it'll dissolve, you know, more and stuff as you get it cooking here. And then you put it on the stove and bring it to a boil. You stir it once in a while. just keep it from scalding. I usually do medium high heat, and we'll come back when that's ready. Another thing too is that I put down that towel that I dried those jars on. I moved it over here to this counter because when you are pulling the jars out of the canner to fill them, it's very hot, and you want a towel or something to not just absorb the moisture, but also keep the jars from clanging on the counter, things like that. Protect your counter from heat and as well. So yeah, that's the reason I did that, and I have all the rings over here and things like that. So yeah. Okay, you can see it's getting close. It's starting to kind of bubble a little bit. I'll give it a stir once in a while, nothing too crazy, because you do want it to come to a boil, but you don't want it to get stuck or anything. So, boiling, when I stir it, it still boils. So that's what you want. So then turn off the heat and remove the pot from the heat, and then we'll go through what's next. Okay. So now we're going to take these out of the water, and please be very careful. This is super hot. I take out 2 jars at once because one jar will be resting this funnel to keep it from dripping, and then the other one will be the working jar. So I'm going to use this to scoop out the syrup. And this gets kind of messy, so try and get it close as you can. The one thing the recipe didn't mention, I had to just look at my book real quick, is how much headspace. Now headspace is, let's see, I'll grab a jar here. Headspace is how high you're going to fill the jar. Now they have tools for that. This is a headspace tool. Can't really see here, but it has like 1 inch, 3/4, half, 1/4 inch. So we're gonna use the 1/2 inch. So fill up. Looks like I could probably get a little more here. Let me see here. Oh yeah, definitely get a little more in there. And headspace is very important because you don't want to have it overflow in the jar, compromising your seal. So it's at a 1/2 inch. Then what you want to do is take your cloth and dip it in your vinegar just a little bit. And I use vinegar because that kind of helps get the stickies off around the rim here, because you don't want any syrup or anything like that to compromise your seal. And then there's a lid and a ring, and put it on there finger tight. Be careful, it's very hot. And then move the next jar in place. Take your thing, put it in your canner, grab another jar, and repeat until all the syrup is in the jars. So I'll be back when the next step is ready. Now another thing I did forget to mention was that about the lids and the rings. It used to be recommended that you soak them in warm water first, the lids, just to make sure that to soften the material for the seal, but it's no longer recommended. I don't like to do it. I don't have a lot of counter space, and I just feel like it's an unnecessary step because they're gonna get heated up in here anyway. But that's your personal choice. You can still do that. Absolutely, it's not gonna hurt anything. So that's an option too. I'm gonna have a little spoon too if I need to just ladle in just a smidge so I don't overdo it, because that definitely happens. One more little scoop here. I think that should do it. Yep, that's good. Get a clean part of your cloth here. Okay, so that one batch of jelly made exactly 6 jars, 6 half-pint jars of syrup. So that's exactly how many I have in here. So I'm gonna go ahead and make another batch, and I will show you when I go to process these. Okay, so here all the jars are filled finally. And I topped off the water. It's kind of hard to tell, but you want at least an inch above the jars for processing. And then I turn the heat up, and once it comes to a full boil, and not until then, you start the timer. So once it comes to a complete boil, for your elevation, for these, I'm going to process them 15 minutes. And as I think I mentioned before, but I don't remember, make sure to have hot soapy water ready. Throw your utensils in because it will be sticky and messy, and you're going to want to get that stuff off your utensils ASAP. Okay, so this is boiling. And I said 15 minutes earlier, but I meant 10. 10 minutes for half pints, 15 for full pints, where I'm at. Again, check your elevation and all that stuff. So, set the timer for 10 minutes. And we'll be back. Okay. Oh, timer's done. I let it sit for another 5 minutes or so. I turn off the heat because it's still boiling, and you don't want to burn yourself because that steam is hot. So another 5 minutes and we'll... Okay, so it's been 5 minutes. Remove the cover away from your face. See all that steam there? And I usually give it another second or two until another 5 minutes, I think, and then boiling will be done and there'll be less steam to burn on. Okay, so it's been another 5 minutes or so, and it's safe to take them out now. So just very carefully lift them out. Place them on a towel. Let's see here. And if all goes well, you'll hear that sweet sound of ping, which means your jars have sealed and all is well. If your jars don't seal, you got to do this over again. Not the repouring and all that, but you'll need to put the jars that didn't seal back in the water and process them. Ooh, you hear that? Process them for another 10 minutes. So. And that's it. You let them cool for at least 8 hours. Overnight's best. And then you're going to wash the jars and then label them. If they're for our use here, I just write the date and what it is on the top. But because these are probably going to go as gifts, I'm going to get some labels and that'll go on the side of the jars here. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative and useful. And I hope you guys have an awesome day. And if you happen to be somewhere and they have choke cherries, I encourage you to give this a try. And if you have them in your area, they're very useful. You can also make jelly out of these. Like I said, I've done that. There's good possibilities. So until next time, take care, everybody.